Hi kids, this is Ivan. Today I'm going to talk to you about unified versus non-unified XP tables. But before I begin, some guy posted on a forum, he got offended and clicked my video right off when I said hiya kids at the beginning. And so let me just be clear, I'm not trying to be offensive or derogatory or call anybody a kid, unless you are, in which case that's great because youth is great. But by the same token, we are playing make-believe and let's pretend and goblins and elves, so we're a little childlike, and I think that's a good thing. Anyhow, it's been kind of a vendetta of mine, just for the heck of it, kind of like a Fermat's last theorem, if you will, to see if I could ever unify the first edition XP tables. I don't think it's ever going to work. Kind of a fun exercise I work on just for the heck of it every once in a while. I get a unified XP table. I understand the elegance of that. I understand the simplicity of that. So I understand why people like to use them. Now, people would say, well, geez, Ivan, why would you work on something like that? There's already 3rd edition and Pathfinder and D20 and 4th edition. They have unified XP tables. Couple things. First off, it just doesn't feel the same. The mojo and the vibe isn't there. I'm not saying anything bad about those games, but the thief doesn't feel like a thief anymore. The magic user doesn't feel like the old magic user. It doesn't feel like I'm playing the older game of D&D when I'm playing those games. So, close, no cigar. Second of all, I think they still have a way to go. Once again, no disrespect to any of those games, but this isn't me saying this. There's a really rabid fans of those various games that will just post things or say things that, like, gosh, the classes aren't balanced, the casters are too powerful, the martial classes aren't powerful enough, etc. It's a tough thing to do. Hats off to anybody that has tried to do it or put it in their game, but I think it just probably doesn't work really, really well. At least not well enough for me. Now, there's a few obvious problems with trying to unify XP tables. First thing is subclasses. How do you make a fighter and a paladin equally powerful when the paladin's got all these extra goodies? There's been all kinds of things tried, from 1st edition, even though they didn't use unified stuff, just to try to give the fighter some more stuff and unearthed arcana, to like modern games. And I think they get close, but not close enough. Second thing is, what about classes that have nothing to do with each other? Magic users, spellcasters versus martial classes and fighters. Fighters versus thieves, clerics versus magic users. Very, very different classes, very different powers. It's really hard, especially in any kind of unified XP, to really equate these things. And not that I think class balance is the end-all, be-all, or holy grail. I really don't. But it's tough, and sometimes you might need to use something that's not unified in order to achieve that sort of balance. Now, if you look at the 1st edition tables, the XP tables, which I'm the most familiar with, by accident or by design, they end up being pretty balanced. The classes throughout the levels end up being really close in power. I don't know why this is. If you look at something like the cleric and the thief, their average hit points, even though they use different hit dice, stay really, really close throughout most of the levels. Ditto for their THAC0 or attack bonus, if you will. Stays really, really close. Cleric's a little ahead, off and on, but not by much. The fighter, on the other hand, first 4 levels or so, he's really close to the thief and the cleric, and then kind of zooms off by 5th level and just gets really better at hit points and his attack, combat ability and all that sort of stuff. Magic user's the odd duck out. Not really good at hit points, can't hit the broadside of a barn, but that's not his thing. His thing is really, really cool spells and fireballs and all that kind of junk. If you look at just the average spell comparison between the spellcasting classes, it's really, really close based on XP in terms of number of spells, power of spells, spell effects, all that kind of stuff. A little less for the cleric, but he's got all that combat stuff. So it really tends to equal out really well. There are some weird things about the 1st edition tables, to be sure. Between 7th and 11th level, the magic user all of a sudden doesn't need very much XP to progress. And all of a sudden he's like taking off like a rocket. Compare that to something like the BX tables, which are close, but not exactly, or the rule cyclopedia tables, any of the basic tables, where it stays pretty close in terms of the ratios the classes needed from the whole way up until they hit about name level. Around 11th level, regardless of whether it's BX or Rules Compendium or 1st edition, all of a sudden the magic users kind of converge in terms of XP they need. And then from then on, all the classes need a lot less in basic. And I'm kind of intrigued by that. I'm thinking of maybe like tacking that onto the end of my 1st edition XP tables just to give the classes a little bit of a break, because I like high-level play, and I don't think it should take forever to get there if you don't want it to. But yeah, it's hard to get the mojo with using unified XP, just looking at something like the thief. Here's a guy that is probably really intelligent, but his skills just aren't as complex as the other classes, and that's part of his vibe, is just zooming through the levels. It's hard to get that same vibe when you're using unified XP because he has to wait a little bit too long. You take a real life example, a guy on the streets. After a few years, he's probably really good at being a real live thief. Whereas something like, real life combat, people take years and years to develop martial arts and fencing skills. And the closest thing to magic is, I guess, would be like something like physics. I mean, you don't even want to know how long it takes to do something like that, or becoming a doctor. So, at the end of the day, I think for all their flaws, for all the non-elegance, the non-unified XP tables of Basic and First Edition are actually a good thing.